very honored to have her here. Also want to point out there is food. There is shoyu chicken, rice, and tofu stir fry, which is a vegetarian dish, and also there is brownies. And then make sure you sign in and do the QR code. And we also have a fundraiser for Gaza. And if you guys want to, can you share a little bit about your fundraiser?
Oh,
just
sure.
for 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes, not 14 minutes. I am from Artists Unite for Palestine. There's over 100 artists that have all donated work, and anything that you donate goes directly to these 15 different families. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So there's an opportunity to directly help and aid Gaza tonight. Okay, so I want to start off with Ehomai. So if everybody can stand up, we're just going to do Ehomai, and then we'll start off with Jasmine.
Give him 30 seconds.
Ehomai pa. Ehomai ka ike mai luna mai e. Una mea una noia una me. Ehomai, Ehomai,
Thank you. You can sit down. So that is just a welcome opening chant to ask for wisdom and guidance. Hopefully, you'll take something from this discussion that will help you navigate in the future. Okay, so she did have pictures to share, but we don't have a computer, so sorry about that.
Anybody got a computer? Yeah, sorry.
That's okay, no worries.
It's okay.
10 minutes. Should I go? And I left an adapter here last weekend, so I know it's still here.
Oh, really? Yeah, could you?
I can go grab my
Okay,
notes.
but we'll start off with Jasmine. Yeah, we'll start off with Jasmine. So anyway, yes.
I got a laptop in my car.
Oh, it's never mind. Somebody has a laptop.
I can go grab it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. What was your name? Brandy. Thank you, Brandy. Okay. So I just wanted to share a little bit about why I felt this was really important for us to have this discussion and to bring Jasmine here. When Jasmine was kidnapped by Israel and taken, there was a video that was released of Jasmine. And in that video, Jasmine says, "I was born in the illegally occupied Kingdom of Hawaii." And if you're watching this, this means that I've been kidnapped. I was, as a Kanaka Maoli, as someone who's in the Hawaiian sovereignty movement, this just really heavily affected me as a person to hear this, and for Jasmine, who is not Kanaka, right? But she's from here, she's born and raised here, for her to claim Hawaiian Kingdom and to make that claim was very powerful, not just for Gaza and the Palestinian movement for liberation and for humanitarian aid, but for us here in Hawaii. And it made that connection. And we need that connection to me. And I feel like Jasmine is really a symbol of that connection of Hawaii to Gaza and Gaza to Hawaii. Because it's all the same struggle. We're all in part of this, this movement against billionaires, capitalism, patriarchy, all of it, colonialism. And so as Ka Lāhui Hawai, we felt it really important that we hear her story and that we platform her story as someone from Hawaii who went and tried to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza and was kidnapped by Israel. And in her video that was released, she did claim Hawaiian Kingdom. To me, that was just a powerful moment for us as Kanaka, and made that connection. And I think a lot of people in Hawaii, Kanaka Maoli, have a difficulty making that connection. So we need, and I feel like she's really a symbol of that. So we're gonna get set up with her pictures. She has some pictures to share, and she will be sharing a little bit about her story. And then afterwards, about around 6:15, 6:30, we're gonna have the panelists come up and have a discussion about Palestine. Thank you. Oh, I'll put it on. Okay. Sorry.
Hello. Hello everyone. Thank you for being patient. This is grassroots status, so I have like this link to the Canva presentation, and somehow I'm gonna get this link to this computer to that screen. And in the beginning, there's gonna be like a 12-minute video, and it's a Palestinian woman who is speaking on like the first year of the genocide really starting. It's like a trigger warning. There's like obviously a lot of genocide going on in that. So I don't know if anyone needs to not be here for that, or after I'll just have us take a collective breaths together so that we can just reallocate. But it kind of sets the preface for I've been following the story of Palestine since 2013. Actually, one of my dear friends, Ibolani, we went to college together. She went to the West Bank in college as a study abroad. And when she came back, she shared with me her experience. And she's actually here on Oahu. I don't know if you guys know the gay agenda. They're wedding planners on the island. Yeah, shout out to them, support them. Let's go. But I don't know if you guys know Zabs, but she had surgery on, Thursday or something. So Ipo couldn't be here today because she's taking care of her beautiful wife. So shout out to Ipo for starting that journey for me. And then yeah, obviously more involved with a day-to-day thing since October 7th. But this lady, if you guys weren't doing a day-to-day thing, she really lays out the first year or so. And I think that I didn't find the video. I did another presentation on Orcas Island, which is where I've been mostly based since 2019. And I have a group of Palestinian activists I've been working with for a few years there. And so one of the guys found this video, and I'm gonna try to figure out how to get the link.
Oren,
Yeah.
can you help us?
Okay, let me put on space. Hold on.
And if anyone else, okay, I don't know. But I guess until the video and presentation is ready, I could talk about when I first got with Global Sumud Flotilla. Honestly, I was just scrolling on my Instagram like we do nowadays, or hopefully you don't, because it's an addiction and it's terrible. But I saw that there was an opportunity to join the flotilla, and this was in August, and I had seen, or I had been, I had sailed from like where I was in the Salmon Islands. It's like, does anyone know where the Salmon Islands is, first of all? Okay, yeah, like nobody basically. It's like Canada almost, but then like right below Canada, there's like in Canada, there's this big island, it's called Vancouver Island, and it kind of creates like a J shape. And in the hook of the J, there's like these little islands. It's kind of like a Pacific Northwest Hawaii. And I found myself there moving like 2019. But there's an auntie on Maui. Oh yeah, who do I send it to? Okay, perfect, yep. I'm gonna do a little bit of technicalities real fast. Boom. Okay, you just send it to her. So I've been paddling in the Pacific Northwest doing like cultural exchange for like the past few years with a Maui auntie who does HOCBS, which is the Hawai'i Outrigger Canoe Voyaging Society. And within the paddle, we paddle through the islands, and we have escort boats. And one of the escort boats, unfortunately, the guy had a stroke, and so he could no longer man the boat, and so he was willing to donate it for a nonprofit for the kids. And so we got the boat ready, and we sailed it to Maui in July. And so after that, I came back to Orcas in August, and then saw the thing on my Instagram. I was like, oh, I just sailed. I have the skills to like, do that. And I've been heavily involved with keeping up with Palestine and whatnot. So it just made sense. I was instantly like 100% yes, I have the skills for this. It's something I can actually do. For me, it was like a no-brainer. And actually, like, it was like 3 questions, and I totally forgot I applied, to be honest. And one of the questions was my email address. So it was like the night of the 16th. I checked my email, and they had sent it on the 13th, and I was like, oh, what the heck? They actually replied. Like, I stayed up. I like tried to go to bed, but I like stayed up all night, like trying to figure out, am I actually serious about going? And like, anything could happen. I could die. It was like the most extreme, and I was like, I just crossed the Pacific. Like, I also was like, I could die. And like, it was like pretty easy transfer there. And so by morning, literally stayed up all night. I was sure, like, if they accepted my application, that I was gonna go. And in that moment, it was kind of crazy because out of this entire experience, I'm telling you, all the things that happened, that moment was like the most unregulated I was. And I finished like filling out more applications that Odeh, and that night was like my friend's birthday party. And as soon as I told my first friend that I was like gonna do this thing, my anxiety level went down. And the more that I told my friends, the anxiety level like went down. And I was like, for some reason, like the community aspect of it, knowing that people supported me and that they like knew where I was gonna be, was like all I needed to like know, because the feeling was so sure for me that it was meant for me, that everything else that happened, I didn't really have a lot of fear about it. And that's my personal experience, and I still find it really strange because there was a lot of stuff that happened. But yeah, it was quite a feeling before I told anyone. And I haven't felt that since, because now a lot of people know. Now it's like, oh, I'm gonna skip to the very end, like after I get out, so that we can like do this part, so I can just tell you guys the like after effects of it, because every step of my journey since getting back to the US, people have been recognizing me, and I've never thought that would happen to me. And I'm a Leo, so I'm like pretty extroverted, but like at the same time I'm like pretty shy, like having strangers be like, it was like my ferry guy, the ferry guy from like the continent to the island was like, so do you protest? I was like, like, yeah, occasionally. And And then I was like kind of scooting around it, and then after a little bit, he was like, "So wait, like, are you the one?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, that was me for sure." And just all these different like little experiences like that, and on Orcas Island, a lot of the community there really rallied for me, and it's a small island. It's like 13 miles across as the crow flies, and in the winter time there's only like 3,000 people. And they were on the corner saying like, "Bring us home," and there's this little girl, Finn Rose, her mom's Tabitha. She was the most radiant pregnant woman I've ever seen, and Tabitha sent me a voice memo after I was already back in Orcas, and it was little Finn Rose being, "Bring us home, bring us home," and I'm like, "Finn, I'm already home, like, good, thank you." Anyhow, so I'm just really grateful also for like people here who may have called and support, and I think that it's been a really beautiful experience to like see how one opportunity that I went on like has also impacted a lot of other people's lives, and that's like a part of my process that's like still ongoing. And like I think at the end of like the day, when I day after day think about this experience, like I really hope that people understand that like I'm just a human, like regular, like anybody else. Like we were all civilians, there were no heroes, and like all of us went because we care about Palestine, and that like my life is no more important than the Palestinians' life. And I think that if more people can understand that, which I feel like a lot of people here do, that like the world will be better off. Like we value our bodily autonomy, like every living being, like everything that exists in the world also deserves that. And I think that's like a solid baseline that I have in my like beliefs about like Earth and how I operate to navigate the world. And yeah, I think like to recenter Palestine in all of this, because like along with a lot of people knowing our face now, like a lot of the media, like I shared my story with these media sources, and they neglected to like include the part that I emphasized, which is like we need to be recentering Palestine. All they cared about was the interception, and it was kind of defeating because it's new for me. It's new for me to like have this media attention, and even to be speaking right now with this microphone, like I'm so afraid of this thing, but like I'm doing it for you guys, so I'm trying. And I think that media has a lot of power and a lot of influence, and if we can use it in the right ways and like get it to the people that like really need to like be open to it and to see both sides of the situation. Sometimes there's a lot of people that I was just on Kauai, the place I was born and raised, and I was like bombarded with like, I mean, like I don't know about people's religion here, but I used to be Christian, so my community there is Christian, and like they were defending Trump, and they were defending ICE, and they were defending like Israel because they're God's chosen people, and I was honestly like heartbroken. And yet at the same time, they're so glad I'm safe because I went to a dangerous place, because I went to face their chosen people, and I'm like, oh, make it make sense, you know? It was so confusing. And at the same time, like they're concerned about, this is like going a little bit rambly zone. This is something that I'm still processing, but it happened just a couple days ago. And for me, like at the heart of this issue that's so important to me, it's like, can we not see that people are being hurt? And like, how do we reconcile whatever beliefs that we have to like do the right thing? And so for the flotilla, I went because I knew it was like the right thing to do. And I think we might be close. They're like 18. I'm pretty good at rambling though, so we can like, does anyone have a question just based off what I've already shared? If not, I'll just keep on rambling a little bit. Yeah.
How do you feel, sorry, I just lost my
No, it's okay.
How effective are nonviolent actions like the flotilla to raise global awareness?
Say it one more time.
How effective are nonviolent actions like the flotilla to raise global awareness?
To be honest about this question, I don't know if everyone heard. It's like how is this like global movement affecting? How did it affect the globe?
No.
Non-violent.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the world like media-wise exploded, I had thrown my phone into the ocean, and I was like in a prison cell. So like you guys know about the effects of what happened on the media more than I do, to be honest. When I got out, I was just like, okay, apparently Italy went up in flames. They like protested. Germany like came to a halt and stopped. And even people in Israel, like Jewish people themselves, were protesting for Palestine. I think that this gets into like my own personal beliefs about activism, and I think that having been a nonviolent movement, the Global Sumud Flotilla prefaced that and made that the ultimatum to make sure that we were safe, because there was a previous flotilla that even though they didn't have weapons, they like threw water and they threw forks and they threw just things at the IDF, the IOF, as they were boarding, and that experience resulted in 10 people being murdered. And so because of previous experiences with other flotillas, they made us like commit to nonviolence. And there is this one part when they boarded us, I'm jumping ahead for the sake of things, but there was like one of the soldiers, they came on, first of all, when they came on the boat, I'll just say it, like, I don't think they really knew what they were doing, to be honest. It was kind of like really, I don't know if entertaining is the right word, but it was very interesting to watch, because the guy, he like took the line and like wrapped it around the railing like 3 times, and we had like a 1.5 meter swell, which is like 5 feet swell going up and down, and then he held the rope, and every time the wave went, it would just like rip out of his hands because it's a boat, you know? And I was like, this guy is gonna like hurt himself, what is he doing? And they like were having him for a really hard time like getting on the boat, and they're like clowns, you know? He's like, come on, he's like, no, like, oh no, and they're like having a super hard time boarding us, and I'm just watching like, what are they doing? And then this other part was, they had his like back to me, and like sitting like half on this bench thing, and he has his back to me, and like his weapon is closer to like my hand than it is to his hand. And I'm like, do you even know what you're doing? You're being super unsafe for yourself right now. And one of the other soldiers like pushed him so that his back wasn't to me. But then like he did a round and he did the same exact thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm obviously not gonna do anything, but like, I think they had to outsource because there were so many of us. And at the same time, like some of them were just children, you know, like they're young people doing their, like in Israel, like everyone has to do like a 6-month, I think it's 6 months of like military, or maybe it's like a year of like military training. And it's just a part of how their country operates. Hold on, just 1 second. Update, we have it on the computer, but it's not showing up on this big screen. So you could just make the executive decision to not do it, because it was a last minute effort, and thank you everyone who tried to make the effort happen. But at this point, I don't know if it's worth it. So I'll just start going into, yeah, so it comes to, it's like the interview, back to the beginning again. I sent in the application, they get back to me again, interview status, they like say, okay, great, like totally, if anyone can make it to Barcelona, like as soon as possible, then we like desperately need people in Barcelona. And I look at my schedule and I just started a new job. It was like my birthday actually. And the day that I told all my friends was the 17th. And then it was the 18th, I start a new job and I go to them and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know that I would be here. I said I'd be here for the next couple months at least, but I forgot I applied to this thing. And I'm probably not going to be here. And they totally understood, they supported it, and I have a working relationship with my bosses, and I'm just really grateful that they allowed me to go on the trip even though I had literally just committed to the job. And then literally the next day I fly to Barcelona. And when I first arrived in Barcelona, boats lined up on the dock, and everyone is just all hands on deck trying to get these boats ready. And a lot of them were bought by the organization. And at the same time, like when I had the interview where it's, oh, you're going to be ready, all you're going to do is like load it up, do a couple of shakedown sails, and then go. And I like get there before my boat gets there. Oyster Lady was my first boat. I had 3. Little Oyster Lady. She was an old gal. No one had been in there for years. She stank. She was so stinky. And I'm like, okay, great. I will clean this boat like it is my home because it is my home now. And so I took out the cushions and cleaned it, and smack dab in the middle of her, bless her soul, is this giant, rusty, crusty engine. It's like kind of green. At one point it was all green, but it's like mostly rust and some green paint is like still scattered around. And we spend most of the time trying to get this engine to like work because, like I said, it's like full of rust. And like it kind of turns on, but it also kind of doesn't. And so like we are spending most of our time trying to get this engine working, and we replaced a couple things. And the volunteers, bless their hearts, there were so many volunteers, mechanics and solar panel electricians and like people that just were volunteers. Perhaps not all of them fully knew what they were doing, and so like a lot of times with this really beautiful grassroots movement, sometimes someone will come to fix something, and they might fix that, but they might also break something else. So it's this constant like back and forth of just getting the boats ready. And like we would wake up in the morning, start working on the boats, go to a meeting, work on the boats, eat some food, work on the boats, all the way until night. And I got there on August 25th, and then our departure date was August 31st. And so we had like a week to get these boats, or my boat that like wasn't really working together. And to be honest, when the whole flotilla left, we were also kind of forced to leave. And what actually happened was that we were taking on a lot of water. So much so that I was dumping buckets into the sink. And right before we had left, we took on 2 or 3 new crew members who weren't boat people, so they were all seasick. So I'm like, you don't look good, just lay down. Don't do anything, just lay down. So we have 3 incapacitated people. The boat is sinking. Captain's like, okay, you can't bail water for another 24 hours, so the next stop we're gonna turn around. So that's like the second day, or September 2nd. We fix the boat for a few more days and like officially leave on September 5th. And then from there we go to Mallorca. Mallorca, again, we have somebody try to work on the engine, and he also is working on the boom. Like I said, these repairs are not actually fixing the problem, they're just kind of like getting us to the next step. So by the time we get to Sidi Bou Said, which is where maybe some of you guys first started hearing about the flotilla, it's where 2 of our lead boats got hit with these fire, they're not bombs, but like they created a big fire on the deck, and the people were okay, you know. No one was injured, but that's where this boat and I separated ways. Before that happened, as we're getting into the anchor point, I do see one of those quadcopters. They're like large drones, and they had a white light shining, and it was quite loud. And it was on our starboard side, and that was probably like one of the only moments where I did feel fear. But more than fear, I felt like, oh, I have to move fast, and I have to do it right now because this drone is coming towards us, and it's potentially going to attack our boat. There was also 2 other drones. There was like a orange light, like flying high and stationary, and a super fast, like green lit drone going across our front. And I think that in the commotion of this weird drone world that we're in now, one of these were the Tunisian Coast Guard, and I don't know about the green one. I think that was the orange one. And the white one, I think, was obviously trying to attack us, but then because of the other drones, it like ended up just going away. And I was like, okay, great, we're safe. Because of the first 2 attacks, the Tunisian government and like Tunis in general, their sovereignty was then up in the air because they were being attacked. And so they're on the ground, security tightened, and we actually went to a hotel for a couple nights waiting for another boat part because our boat was still not doing so hot. We were also kind of like further back in the flotilla. The other boats were kind of like already over to this other port called Bizerte. And the alternator, I had installed it. Oh, before that, it took us 8 hours. Literally, my boat was like 200 yards away. I could have kayaked. I should have kayaked, but it took 8 hours for the police to release us. There was like a press conference and all these other things explaining the situation. And it was really interesting because like Tunis is North Africa. It's technically the global south, and like the difference in how the flotilla was managed from the global north to the global south became very apparent in Tunis. And I think it's like another part of this like experience that I had, like lesson-wise, like yes, we need to advocate for Palestine. There's also the whole entire global south that also needs our help and advocacy because they do not have the resources, they do not have the connections that people in the global north have, and it was really disheartening to see like there are so many. Waters, and so these boats were like a majority of their delegation, and it's also where I switched boats to this other boat called Odeh, my second boat, and previous to that, the boat was perfectly fine. Like there was nothing really wrong with it, but it was like a Spanish and Tunisian group, and because they had language barriers, they all quit, and it was something that then, because of that boat specifically being like a Tunisian boat, we then were in this like weird energy of like the different, because there's different countries, right? Like the different ways, the strategy of things that were way above my head were like being put upon in our boat. This is also where I met Mandela's grandson. That guy's super chill and really nice. And also this Tunisian girl, Rodenia, who I really wanted to be on her boat. Like she melded really good with the crew, but like because of some of the like misogyny that also exists within these cultures, her profile was swiped from the organization itself because they wanted other people to be on the boats. And so it's just another part of how something like this big grassroots movement coming down, trickling down to like where it's actually on the ground and like in my face. Like these are all parts of like the global south that we need to be mindful of in order to like help in solidarity with our friends across the world. So we leave Tunis on Teke, and 2 nights later is when there are, from Tunis, we actually go to Porto Paulo. We actually finally rejoin the flotilla and are anchored in Porto Paulo for a couple nights as more people rearrange and more boats come in. And so finally in Porto Paulo, even though like throughout this time previously a lot of different boats were scattered, boats from like Italy were still coming around, like in Porto Paulo we finally come together, and then we also leave from there. And so we're off the coast of Crete, and because of what happened with the bureaucracy in Tunis, I realized that like my position on the boat, where previous it was like really necessary because we didn't have autopilot and all these things. The new boat has autopilot. We have another crew member. We have more than enough people, and I hear that there's another boat. This boat is called Sirius. This was my final boat. Needed help, and they needed a helmsperson. They needed someone who could steer the boat. And one of my friends, who is an organizer, asked if I could come along. There's a little bit of boat drama, but basically I transferred over. And fun, when I first get over to Sirius, I'm like taking a nap in this secret hammock, and a falcon lands in the crow's nest. It's like so beautiful, and we make eye contact for like hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and everyone's like, wow, this is a sign. And I'm like, dude, I also feel like it's a sign, like the falcon has her back, you know? And I definitely like Google search, like, and also fuck Google, but what falcon energy is, I don't remember, but if we look it up again, I was like super on point. I'm like, yes, this is good affirmation, I really like it. And it stays all night and into the morning and whatnot, and it was just a really beautiful like sign that I was like in the right place. Sirius, the boat, is like a 200,000 ton boat. It's big. I've never helmed such a big boat, and the way that you have to steer it, you have to like crank every time. It's like a huge arm workout. I'm like, oh my gosh. And at one point, my captain, he even clocks himself like on the chin because there's like such crazy rocking going on. And it was like a very stressful situation, and so I think he was sleep deprived, tired, overly stressed. Just on that note, all the captains, despite whatever things they have going on personally about their behaviors or characteristics, were under so much stress. I have so much compassion for the captains because not only are they responsible for the crew, they're also responsible for attending captains' meetings so that they know what the organization wants for them, as well as like purposefully sailing in a war zone. So just like they have a lot of responsibility, and I think one of the most like pressurized points of this entire mission and operation was like put directly on the captain's shoulders. So I have a lot of respect for those guys, every single one of them. It was like not an easy thing to do. And there's another night where there's like a lot of drone attacks. We can like hear them buzzing around, but the ones that are silent are the ones that actually drop. These like flashbangs. And for me, it was like, not gonna lie, a little exciting because it kind of sounded like fireworks. I was like, oh, like fireworks, like, you know, it's like right, like the boat right next to me is getting hit, and I'm like, there's like excitement, and I don't know if that means I'm kind of messed up, but like, it was like this, I was like, you know, putting myself out there so that we didn't like get attacked, and like, it was a really interesting night, and the thing is about these attacks that were happening to our boat, like I don't think I had fear because I understood that they're scare tactics. And with the ones that were like the flashbangs, like fireworks. Like if someone's sail was out, they would rip the sail. So you're trying to dismantle the boat. But I understood that they weren't targeting us, like because obviously if they wanted to like kill us, they like would, you know, just probably be like over like that. So again, I didn't really feel fear, but just heightened awareness to my surroundings. After that, we stayed a lot closer to the coast, and like the organization had to like reevaluate the situation. This is also the part where like, I don't know if you guys heard, but there's like the Greek Navy sent out a boat, and like the Spanish sent out a boat that never showed up, and I think Italy also kind of sent a boat that never showed up. But there's like a heightened surge on the governmental levels at this point because the flotilla was like building steam. From here, this is probably where, if you guys weren't aware, maybe were, because this next part is the interception. And I kind of talked about it already, where these guys came on the boat, didn't really know what they're doing, and past the funny business of them not understanding what they were doing for the most part, besides just standing there and holding us at gunpoint, it was a very long night. It was like the longest night of my life because like I went from chaos and like getting the boats ready to like making sure we didn't sink to making sure these non-boat people became boat people and like meetings and like sun up to sundown into the night work, and then all of a sudden I was just told to sit, like stay seated for like hours and hours and hours. And our boat was second in command until once the first boat got taken out, they came for us. So we also got intercepted early on, and we had the most people like on the boat. We had 38 people on our boat, which is like another reason why I knew that I should come over because I could help a lot more people versus my previous boat had like 7. And I think because we had so many people, they didn't cuff us, they didn't blindfold us, they didn't really do anything but search us they stole all of my stuff back away. Some other people got to like keep a bag. I literally had a piece of chocolate in my pocket and like my passport. That's like all I got to keep, which was a bummer. But yeah, now I get to tell more people about how much of like a real pirate they are. They're just really, they stole the boats, they stole the aid, they stole my stuff. And I don't fully know on that aspect, like how we're gonna like press charges to like try to get the boats back. I think there is efforts on that front. But as far as my personal belongings, I kind of just have to take a hit and use it as like a way to like share with people like how ruthless they are in that aspect. But because I had a global North passport and a US passport, like my treatment, like post the interception into the dock area, into the cell, was very minimal. It's a lot harder to speak on other people's experiences, but other people were blindfolded and cuffed and held in stress positions on their knees for like hours, some 5 hours, some overnight. Some people were beat, some people were kicked, some people were like hung on a stick and beaten. There's like a lot of different mistreatments that happened. I actually have this paper, a piece of cardboard with me, and to talk about the U.S. consulate, they did absolutely nothing for us, but they made us fill out a form, and when they made us fill out a form, I kind of swiped a couple pens, and I felt like a prison baddie when I did that. I came back to the room, and the ladies were stoked because we were trying to leave messages for the other prisoners, like on the walls, and this piece of cardboard was with me in the cell actually, and we wrote down all the different like misdemeanors that were like I don't know the verbiage for it, but like massive sleep deprivation is one of them. There's like prison cell, like there was no lawyer and no call. We weren't given prisoner rights because we weren't prisoners. We were never charged with anything. It was mostly that we were kidnapped and held captive, and then we were released because of all the pressure. But when I look at this piece of cardboard, I'm like, wow, we've been through so much. And it's definitely interesting to have interacted with some of the people there, because like I see that they're just regular people, and at the same time they've been brought up in a way that all the ladies, by the way, all try to look like the Kardashians, like all of them. I was just like, why do they're all trying to look the same. It's the culture there. And the ones that escorted me through like immigration were very, how do I put it nicely, very rude. They were bitches. There was like a bathroom, and I'm like, hey, can I use the bathroom? People are like going in and out of the bathroom, and they're like, no. And I'm like, I have to use the bathroom. They're like, no, we're not allowed to. I'm like, other people are using the bathroom. Like, what the heck? And then there's like this hard, like corkboard with like paper on it. Like obviously it looks like my rights. So I like try to go read my rights because I want to know what my rights are. They're like, no, you can't read that. I'm like, other people are reading it. Like they're just, I think they're at their end of the shift. And one of the girls just like kept on sitting down. Anywhere that she was down, she just kept on walking along, sitting down again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she's like not really doing her job. And she was really happy to leave. I'm like, okay, I think she was just really overworked that day, but like took it out on me. So I personally didn't have a great experience there, but I wasn't ever like hit, you know. So it's like, it's definitely like a soft treatment compared to like the global south, and like one one thousandth. How do you say that? 1/1000th?
Yeah.
I guess I've never said that, I just read it, you know? In comparison to the Palestinians, like, I don't know how many young children are here that could understand what I'm saying, but like, the Palestinians, like, they receive like electrical treatment, like so much so that like some of them lose their eyesight, and that's just one example. I don't think I'll go much further into detail there for the sake of just my personal capacity right now. There are still Palestinian prisoners. There's still like Palestinian like press people who aren't being charged. There's like children in prison still because they're like considered spies. It's their excuse, but there's like 400 some children. And as far as like the ceasefire goes, like, I don't know if everyone knows, but the ceasefire is non-existent. It's failed from the start. People have been killed every day for the most part, like 90% of the days since the ceasefire was announced. A few days after we got out, I think on October 10th. And we still really need to be advocating for Palestine. And I guess that brings me to my next point, which is like the global solidarity aspect of this entire mission, like has brought more people together, and it's brought like a revitalization to the movement, which I think is really powerful and beautiful, and I'm really honored to like be a part of that. And at the same time, I'm just one regular human, just like all of us in this room. We're all just human beings, and my strength is boats and the water and caring about Palestine. And I think that each one of us in this room, we all have strengths, and we can all find a role that we can play. Because whether we like it or not, our tax dollars are going to create these weapons of mass destruction and murdering and genociding of people.
The lights go off every 2 hours.
Ooh, we've hit the 2-hour mark right now. Give yourself a pat on the back. We're in this, a little reprieve. I could definitely
It's
use a
more
little
towards the
bit.
right, the switch, the little, it says, I go off every 2 hours.
Oh, wow. That was nice. Right there, right there. Second to the last one.
You guys are giving me a chance to let me look at my notes. Thank you. you. Can we also give a hand to all the people that helped bring us together? I feel really grateful that Hālau reached out to me and that she would bring me here to speak to all of you. And we only met today, but we've been talking online, and she's just a really beautiful human, and I'm just really grateful that she would be moved by my words, and I really did mean them when I was talking about the kingdom of Hawaii. You know, like, this land is illegally occupied, and there's a lot to that. And I think that, you know, a lot of the U.S. military being at our front door here, they want us to be afraid. They want us to think that we're powerless, but really, like, especially with this global movement, it was clear to me that, like, the people have the power, and, like, if we don't let them forget that, then we win, you know? Like, we truly do have the power. I don't know if you saw that the New York mayor, Dottie, and Trump had an interview or, like, a meeting for, like, half an hour, and Dottie never gave in to his fear tactics, and by the end of it, like, Trump was like simpatico with him. It was really strange because he had like no sway, you know? Anyhow, I think it's like really important that we remember that, like, if we remember that we have the power, then they have nothing over us, then there is nothing to fear, even though they have all these things that make us afraid. If we don't let them, then they can't really do anything about it, because, like, we are the people, and along with that, like, we have control over our choices, and they want to brainwash us in certain ways to make us think that we don't, you know, and, like, that we make choices that benefit them, like Coca-Cola. Like, there's, like, boycotting that we can do. Like, there's, if I had my presentation, there's, like, a bunch of different brands that we should not purchase. I don't know if I should name them now, but, like, yeah, McDonald's is one, Starbucks, like, you know, like the Sabra hummus, and I can definitely create a list for humans that want to boycott or continue boycotting. There's also this app called No Thanks.
QR codes about Chevron/Texaco.
Oh my gosh, thank you. We have community support for this. This is amazing. There's also a No Thanks app, and you can, like, scan the barcodes when you're shopping, and it'll tell you whether or not they contribute to Israel or not. And on the local level, here in Hawaii specifically, first of all, it's really good to be home. I know I've been living in Washington for a while, but, like, I have been there to, like, learn about colonization, about how to help home better, and I still really consider Hawaii my home, and because of our location here, it's, like, really serious, right? We have on Hawaii PMRF, the Pacific Missile Range facility. On Oahu, of course, we have Pearl Harbor and Red Hill that we're very aware of. We also know about Ka Lāhui and, like, how the water table is fractured, and especially right now with Baha'u'lloa and Josh Green trying to, like, sell off lands permanently. Like, we need to be calling Josh Green and, like, not letting him sleep so that he understands how serious we are about the things that he's doing is illegal, and we will not stand for it, and we demand that, like, our lands be released back to the Hawaiians. Like, it's just very clear to me. I think that, to kind of wrap it up, like, when we see Palestine, we also know about, like, the Global South, and I don't know if people understand about what's happening in, I have a list, Congo, Sudan, Lebanon, Yemen, Myanmar, Kashmir. These are a few of the places that we also can be aware of and advocating for, as well as here in Hawaii in our front on our front door, like I just mentioned. And I think that sometimes
a lot of the times it can feel overwhelming. I've experienced that myself, and I think that just for the sake of everyone in this room, like, we all have a capacity, and I think it's really important that we recognize when our bodies are feeling our limits and to stop there. Like, no one's asking us to go and like dig ourselves a hole and to like lay in it, you know? Like, I think that the productivity model of like America and like capitalism wants us to believe that's how we do it, but like really, like, if we can just be mindful of these places and understand that we have community that can do like one thing or have a role to play, that's all it takes. Like, all of us just need to do like one thing consistently, and that'll make a huge effort, and it doesn't have to be so overwhelming, and over time we'll get used to that, and then we can add another thing. I think it's up to all of us. It's all of our personal choices of how we want to live in this life. I guess I was just raised to do the right thing, or to try to do the right thing, and like that's why I went on the flotilla. But I think for all of us here, there's like something that we can do if we want, if you guys want. Like, I totally encourage you to do it. If you need help figuring out what that might look like, super willing to like figure it out together, you know? Like, we're in this together, and I think that's like my main message. And yeah, I think I'm ready for the next part.
Thank you for that. That was really good talk. So we're going to set up for the forum, and if all the speakers can come up to the front table, and we're going to set that up. And then also Raquel, if you can come up to the front table and introduce the speakers. And just so you folks know, there's food there, help yourself. So the next hour will be more of a discussion about Palestine. And you know, we have people here in the room that are doing the frontline work for Palestine, fundraising, the Freedom Flotilla, and then so please help yourself to more food as we set up, and then we should end here about 7:30, and then you can take pictures with Jasmine if you want after. Thank you so much. Okay. So if you introduce us.
Just however you like introduce me. I'm okay.
Yeah, and then there's some mic right there. Introduce yourself first. Okay.
Aloha everyone, I'm Raquel. I'm with Ka Lāhui Hawai. I was born and raised here. I guess I'll just introduce the panelists. I'm still learning how to introduce myself, so it's, anyway. So let's start at the far end. We have Kainoa, Azama. He is a Kanaka and Kanaka activist. No, okay.
Okay, just flowing. I think Raquel just summed it up really eloquently of just like, we keep it simple, yeah? Everything is, as they say, there's a difference between self-proclaimed versus self-evident. And you know, when we're self-evident, if you don't know me, go ask somebody, right? Because why am I gonna introduce myself at my community? My community can say enough. Yeah, mahalo.
And then we have Dottie Lux. He's with International Solidarity Movement, along with Ashley Corri. And go ahead.
Yeah, we come to Hawaii more recently from the Bay Area, and we have both spent time in Palestine in the West Bank, standing in solidarity with Palestinians facing ethnic cleansing. Very interesting hearing about your experience with the IOF. I myself have experienced these charming people as well. And I think it's an honor to be here and share our experiences, mostly because knowledge is power.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley. I also had my awakening about Palestine in college in around 2012. And even more of an awakening October 7th and the following few days and last couple of years. And my going to the West Bank was such a, it felt like a very natural progression of actions, activism, trying a lot that didn't work in the streets in the Bay Area and in like city council meetings, and just doing all these big pushes and shutdowns of the Golden Gate Bridge and trying to keep warships from leaving the dock in Oakland, that sort of thing, and just seeing it not produce any fruitful effects immediately, and just the urgency that the unfolding genocide really made so many of us feel. And I feel really lucky that I was in the Bay Area during this time, which has such a large, like a huge Arab population and a lot of just awakening and like Black Panther, like the Black Panther Party, and this solidarity from that, and just it's been quite the hub of action. So I felt really grateful to be there the last couple of like year and a half before relocating here, quite gratefully and humbly as well. But yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up there as part of the intro. Thank you all so much for turning up tonight.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and aloha. My name is Salma Rizvi. I'm the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Hawai'i, and I am just so blessed and honored to be able to share space with you, Jasmine. And I've heard your story, and what a beautiful and thought-provoking and humble and just gracious journey that you went on to really demonstrate civic engagement in a way that radicalizes the consciousness and rotates the heart. So thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here tonight.
I think I'm going to pass the mic to Kainoa to speak on hunger and Hawaiian sovereignty.
Yeah, ana ai ke aloha kākou, and mahalani to Jasmine too, and Healani for really opening up this space in a very good way. So when it comes to hunger, so part of the work that I get to do, I get to go all over the place, but long story short, one of the things that when Healani had asked me to talk about hunger that I was really thinking about is really this recognition. Recently I spoke at the World Food Forum held in Italy in Rome, and one of the things that was really unique about that space is we recognize that where food can be used as this tool of war, which there's been a lot of conversation about opposing for a very long time, not just recently, but for decades now. We also recognize, especially here in Hawaii, right, how food can be utilized as a tool for peace as well. And when we think about this idea of where everybody comes together and where we may be coming from very different backgrounds, very different cultures, very different understandings, we also recognize too that there are some common, I guess, like principles and values that get shared over those things that can help us build a shared reality. So when we're there and fortunate where there's these various different backgrounds, this is a United Nations initiative, and there's these people who are coming in from Russia, from China, from across the Pacific, from all over the world, where we know there's contention, and you can feel that tension too, even though it's a youth event that I was attending. But regardless, one of the things that when I had the opportunity to speak was just when it comes to this idea of us prescribing or subscribing ourselves to a view of another person. One of the unique things that was taught to me by an elder from Kona, Maui, was he said, you know the word for enemy in Hawaii? And I was like, oh, like Hawaii, you know, like what do we use? Different definitions, right? He said the word we use is enemy because it was a learned word. We didn't have that in our worldview. Because for us, when we had conflicts with individuals, it was oftentimes our own family members. So when you think about like chiefs of war and this idea of kingdoms fighting each other, it was really family feuds. And in that understanding, violence is our last form, is the lowest form of communication. And that was taught to me by Kumu Ramsey, Tom, in that piece. So when you have a different worldview from that lens, and we think about the gifts that we have here in Hawaii, and mahalo Jasmine for even bringing up the kingdom piece, I think those are the gifts that we have the ability to share to the world. Because like food, when we have this opportunity to share, we have an ability to build a new shared reality. And one of the sad things with media and this idea of polarization that has been happening, and even indoctrination in all truth, is we start to distance ourselves from being able to have that shared reality. But the other part to the reality is in abundance, there's confusion, but in scarcity, there's clarity. And we're living in very scarce times when countries can decide and send billions of dollars of resources and weapons that are built now. I will also add, when it comes to what's threatening our food system in the Pacific, is also deep sea mining, which these mining companies are saying we need to replenish the US arsenal with the rare earth minerals. I'm sorry, but you don't get to negotiate resources that feed our future as young people to subscribe us to wars we never agreed to. And nor have we had a chance as young people to really deeply come together and decide what the future of the planet is for us, not for generations and other people's economic or military interests. So when we think about this idea of bringing people together and this idea of hunger, I often look to what are the different things that we've utilized here in Hawaii to build senses of solidarity even amongst our own community. And I think those are the things that we can have deeper conversations and explorations on, and how do we make this shared reality, and how do we build this shared vision, as we're seeing now with the actions that Jasmine has done and others that really have enabled us with now when we think about social media to help the everyday person who may not see themselves, as Jasmine was sharing, as somebody who would be, on the news, popular in this way, but regardless, the core part too is to be a part of the action. How do you have that Berlin Wall moment where we all, regardless of what side we're on, decide it's time to take down the wall? because those are the things that were built not even by us. So how do we really deeply challenge these barriers and be able to have that shared reality, to create the shared vision? Because again, like I said earlier, I'm not for subscribing to conflicts, economic interests, whatever it is, that was set by somebody else that we're gonna have to live with. That's not their decision to make, and we need to reclaim that power and that authority and build that shared reality amongst generations. Yeah, mahalo.
I forgot to add that along with hunger, I did hunger strike while in prison because I just knew that, you know, in Gaza they were being starved out and it didn't feel right, and I didn't want to eat their food. And I always forget to mention that, so just wanted to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, what powerful words. My goodness. I think to speak about my experience with Palestine, we talk about and we know about and we see about a lot of the way that hunger affects people in Gaza, and that is widely publicized, but we don't really necessarily understand how food works in the West Bank. I think that it's very easy and clear to see once you're there in this very non-complicated way. Every single bit of Palestinian life is dictated by the Israeli occupation, up to and especially food. Ashley and I were talking beforehand, what was like the one thing I could share about food systems or you know, in relation to hunger in what I experienced. And before October 7th, Palestinian labor was legally exploited in what we call 48, in the occupied territories called Israel. They could legally hire Palestinians and pay them or not pay them, it didn't really matter. So their labor was exploited in all the food systems as well. And after October 7th of 23, right? Palestinians were no longer legally able to work in 48. So the Israelis need someone else to exploit, right? So they started importing, I forget the word that they used to describe their exploited workers, but they started importing a workforce from Asian countries. And while I was in Palestine, an enormous flock of sheep was stolen by a group of settlers, and I went with my comrade on this crazy sheep chase, to try to find these sheep and goats, landing us in some settler farms and other occupied areas. And not only did I come face to face with settlers with giant guns and like truly like a Rob Zombie horror film looking people, and I use the term people quite loosely, but I also like started taking pictures, of course, if I saw any emblems or logos or anything like that, because I want to know where these people are from. So that ended, and I got back to where we were staying, and I said to someone who spoke Hebrew, what does it say on the back of this person's shirt? It looked like a worker with maybe some kind of sun hat as the logo. And it said in Hebrew, we only need Thai labor. So this was to say that they didn't need to exploit the Palestinians, they could now exploit other people. And they proudly proclaimed this on the logo of their shirt. And we could talk about the numbers of olive trees that have been destroyed. We could talk about the poisoning and the killing of the sheep and the goats and things like this. We can talk about how hunger is used as a way of ethnic cleansing. And it's really interesting to me, what I find the most interesting is that this is confusing to some people, when in fact, if we look at Turtle Island, where I'm from, that's the exact methods that were used to all but ethnically cleanse the people from that land. So the parallels are really easy to see, and I thought that of all the experience I had around food, you know, that was a really big one that I could share. That logo really did kind of shake me, and it's a startling image that I still have.
I think you spoke to the few things I was going to add about, like, a lot of the work we do in ISM when we make it to the West Bank is we stay with Palestinian families in a lot of rural towns, specifically, actually the one in No Other Land, if you've seen this documentary. And I do, side note, I do want to like maybe touch, never mind, we'll get back to that. But yeah, a lot of these Palestinian families they live off of their land, and the milk and cheese and from their sheep and goat and what they grow on it. And right, one of the tactics of the occupation to keep, like, any way they can terrorize and disenfranchise and destroy the land and the means of providing food, they do. Yeah, there is that. And we see also how hunger and sending in supposed aid and having these aid distribution sites, like we see how that in Gaza was only used as a way to draw people out, and like we all know that, like, the massacres that occurred here. So just to see how even like that sort of it's been used as a tool of all of this, it's horrifying. And the 1,000-calorie diet that Israel's siege on Gaza had everybody on for years and years. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give us all a moment to maybe take a collective breath. And we see how that same, like the same thing has happened here. And I love the like the Aino days that occur in this community, and the reclamation of land and like traditional ways of growing, and this word it's not gonna be, but Ahupua. Can somebody? Yes, just these like really beautiful ways of reclaiming connection to land and how to grow things, being in harmony with it. And lastly, I'll say about we can tell that like Israelis do not belong to the land there by how they treat it, similarly to how the military comes and treats the land here. And I don't have to, like, I'm certainly speaking to the choir, but like the parallels are so very strong. Yeah, so to see all the reclamation of it it's good. It's heartening. Okay, keep going down the line.
I kind of want to ask Ashley and Dottie a question. I just thought about it while you guys were speaking. Well, a little backstory. I kind of don't share this at all about myself. I had an opportunity to live in the occupied territories when I was younger through my mom's friend, who's a pastor. The thing that really hit me was it was a really good offer to pass up. You know, I would have had my tuition paid for college. Living expenses would be free. I wouldn't have to worry about anything, as long as I helped in the agriculture. And for some odd reason, I just didn't feel it, you know? And I'm so glad, like, I didn't know what was going on then. Like, I knew about the checkpoints and all that stuff, but I'm so glad I didn't take that offer, because it was so true, you know, like, so tempting. But I do recall, like, a lot of stories from my friends and stuff, how they had to, like in Gaza, in order to get bread past, like, sometimes you can't get bread, they have to pass it through the walls. What else? Sorry. I was speaking and I kind of lost my thought, but even in the West Bank, nobody really knows the amount of abuse the Palestinians go through. And I kind of wanted to ask you guys, like, could you guys share some stories about that? I know, like, we always see things about Gaza. I mean, by all means, it's really important to speak about it because the bombardment and our taxpayers' money goes to this. But we also don't know about the West Bank. There's a lot of stuff I see, but I just wanted to know if you guys can touch more about it.
Every single thing is monitored, controlled, and determined by the Israeli occupation. Roads are destroyed and Palestinians build makeshift roads that destroy the cars that we're able to put together. They don't have what should be a 15-minute drive to your friend's house can take 3 hours or not at all. Yeah, I was there. I'll speak about myself because I know that this is moving for folks. I was very much needing an antibiotic. I was very, very much needing an antibiotic, and you don't need a prescription in Palestine to get an antibiotic, which is great. You just need a pharmacy. And the closest pharmacy on the map is a 15-minute drive. Okay, great. We have a car, got arranged for someone to get me there. Every checkpoint, every city, every town is closed by these gates, and every entrance into this town that I tried to find, the gates were closed. So then it's 2 hours, then it's 3 hours, and I'm like, oh my goodness, forget it. I can't get this medication because I've now wasted so much gas, so much time, and my purpose is here to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. I'll just try another day. And that is what happened to me, and I am an American, a Jewish American, right? So, like, every bit of trauma comes from every side, yes, and you could follow the international solidarity movement on Instagram and watch the daily postings that come up of what happens. I thought, like, you know, I experienced everything from taunting and name-calling to destroying wells and killing animals to being held at gunpoint to being blindfolded and zip-tied. I was not blindfolded and zip-tied. All of these things that I just said happened to Palestinians, and they didn't happen like omnipresently by the universe. They happened by Israelis, by settlers, the army and police, all as different arms. And settlers are the people that inhabit the land that is not theirs, right? So you talk about having this opportunity as a non-Jew, right? I was given every opportunity. I was raised Zionist. I could go at any time in between 18 and 22, be paid to go to Israel, and I could take up arms for them. I could have all of my education, all of my food, all of my health care, every single thing paid for. They would give me guns, they would give me ATVs, and they would be very thrilled that I was there, right? And the settlers that I encountered, a great percentage of them are from Texas, from Florida, from different places in the occupied territory of Turtle Island, right? There are Americans being paid to torment Palestinians.
Well, there are, just briefly, like, if you just imagine, like, rural towns and then settlements that, like, we speak about settlements and settlers, but what are they? it often starts as an outpost, like up on a hill above a town, a school bus or a van, set whatever, yes,
whatever they want up on a hill.
to come and yes, start to like stake a claim to that land, and then slowly, and we watch this happen. They start to build, they start to build structures, start to install like water, and just make it more like less an outpost, and soon enough they're building these condos, settlements, and they're encroaching upon villages.
It looks so much like the pop-up houses that in neighborhoods that you see here, where they all kind of look the same and they're all kind of beige. That's what settlements look like. We drive past them, and I'm just like, settlement, new settlements coming over here.
And these people, they'll come down, and often it's like teenagers, like young, like teenagers, or like a father with his child strapped to him alongside his assault rifle. And they'll come down and they'll terrorize the families who still remain on their land, which many of them, of course, have been driven out. They've been beaten and had their homes demolished. Right, that is another thing that often happens. They'll come in, and the army will come into these towns and bring these completely arbitrary, drawn-up maps and claim that this town is in a firing zone, and that these Palestinian families who have lived there for generations and generations have to vacate. And they're given the option to either pay to bulldoze their own homes or let their homes be bulldozed. Is that how it goes?
Pretty much, they can bulldoze, but they still have to pay for it.
Oh,
if
right.
their home is bulldozed, they still have to pay for the bulldozing of
And you
their
witness some of these demolitions. Yes, people who are, yes, just this sort of thing. They'll come down, they'll do this, they'll terrorize, and it's relentless. It's like never ending. I do want to, I don't know, I don't want to take up too much space here, and we want to hear from. But yeah, that's kind of just like a glimpse of some daily life.
Yeah, I think it's also important to acknowledge that Palestinians are under these dire circumstances, and it is unbelievable to me. The most shocking thing to me is that the generosity continues to pour from them. The way you spoke about the indigenous people just not having the thought of an enemy, like not having the word for an enemy. Palestinian people continue to be like this while being under constant bombardment for 80 years, right, of this colonization. And in their steadfastness, in their sumud, in their onipa'a, is joy, is laughter. I can't tell you the number of times I pretended to be a goat just to get a laugh. And it worked, you know? And the kids are still kids, but they're smarter than any of us could ever be, having just walked into this situation. So very often we look to children to understand what it is that we should or shouldn't do. Should we have our flashlight out? Should we not have our flashlight out? Should we film this? Should we not film this, right? Like, as internationals, as guests in their homes, it's a constant focus to imagine yourself as some sort of deterrent, and also an observer. And I loved watching the flotilla also kind of enact that, where it's like when the flotilla was being captured and kidnapped, Palestinians were able to fish. They were able to get food, not for the rest of their lives, but enough to be effective. And that was one of the most beautiful things that I loved to see that came out of the flotilla. So earlier you asked, like, you know, kind of like, what did it do? Well, Palestinians were able to get fish that day, and that to me, that was huge. That was a success. That was sumud. That was onipa'a. That was steadfastness in their own place.
Yeah. Sorry, I also wanted to mention, like, at these checkpoints, there are segregations where Palestinians have to. There's a separate line for only Palestinians. Everyone else has another line, and even like in the West Bank, they have like rolling blackouts and scheduled time for water, where they only are allowed, I think, 2 days to receive water.
And during certain times of war, that's restricted to once a week, once a month, whatever it is that the occupation decides.
Yeah. So I just wanted to like make you guys all aware, and I'm gonna hand it off to Salma.
Thank you so much. Mahalo. I actually was doing legal human rights work in the West Bank during Operation Brothers Keeper, and I think the scene that has been described here today is very real. I experienced it differently as a brown woman of color who could be passed off as Palestinian, and so living under occupation day in and day out really radicalizes you. And at that time when I came back, it was the George Floyd protests were happening, and yeah, it's interesting to kind of see the racist element, and most importantly, it's where you see an apartheid state. So when we talk about apartheid, that is the West Bank. You can see roads for white settlers, roads for colored Palestinians. You can see a different kind of nation state operating within it. There's zone A, B, and C. These are kind of technical terms around permitting, and you can see the discriminatory praxis and antitrust violations flow. You can see industries like SodaStream, kind of say that they operate in Israel, but it's really the West Bank. It's occupied territory, and so. Yeah, I'm so happy that this conversation is happening, and I just wanted to, if it's okay, I have a little bit of a presentation that I've prepared this evening with hopefully some action that we can kind of start to think about. And I want to thank my Director of Community Engagement, Sergio Alcabilia, who is back there and really is helping us to build kind of movement right now. And so the ACLU of Hawaii sits on land that has been stewarded for generations by Native Hawaiians. We know that Native Hawaiians are a distinct indigenous peoples whose ancestors were the original habitat of what's now considered the state of Hawaii. While the ACLU works within the U.S. federal and state legislatures and courts to protect civil liberties and demand greater freedom for all Hawaii's residents, we recognize that Native Hawaiians have never relinquished their sovereignty or settled their claims with the United States. Thus, I acknowledge I'm a settler on occupied lands, and with this positionality, I have a kuleana to give back to community. While a portion of my civil rights work intersects indigenous justice, I am not Native Hawaiian and do not purport to have views on issues such as federal recognition that should be determined by the Native Hawaiian community. Instead, as Executive Director of ACLU of Hawaii, I support the free speech, free protest, and free assembly of indigenous communities. So today I want to, hopefully, if I can get through this, just give you all 8 points of, sort of research and where I see these connections happening on today's topic about hunger and occupation and struggle. So both Hawaii and Philistine are considered highly militarized occupied lands. As we know, Hawaii is the most densely militarized state in the country, and 25% of land on this island is controlled by the military. The current land leases are up for renewal in 2029, and there's more than 29,000 acres of land across both Oahu and Hawaii Island. The federal government, however, also owns land outright in Hawaii, equating to almost 547,000 acres. A large portion of these lands, approximately 180,000 acres, were stolen from the Kingdom of Hawaii after the illegal annexation. And the current militarization of Hawaii is considered by some scholars as an example of continued colonization and occupation in Hawaii. And Kanaka Uivivi have resisted the U.S. military's presence in Hawaii for generations. The 1970s was marked by a modern organized movement against military occupation in Hawaii. This movement culminated in a bold and successful fight to end the destructive bombing of Kaho'olawe by the Navy. And while the training range was discontinued, to this day, the Navy has failed to completely clear the island of unexploded ordnances and debris in contravention to our constitutional right to a healthful environment as articulated in the Hawaii State Constitution, Article 11. Furthermore, every 2 years, the U.S. conducts the world's largest international maritime warfare exercise, Rim of the Pacific, also known as RIMPAC, across the Hawaiian Islands. Over 30 countries, including Israel, participate. Last year's exercise culminated in 40 ships, 3 submarines, and 150 aircrafts engaging in warfare training exercises in Hawaii's oceans. Not only do the exercises themselves threaten marine life and environmental health of the islands, but local communities and family are also impacted. Also, during RIMPAC, increased military personnel presence resulted in a rise in violence incidences, an increase in domestic violence incidences and rape cases. Accordingly, military presence does not make our community any more safe, and in fact, there is research to show that it makes us less safe. So that's my first point. Second point is that Native Hawaiians and Palestinians are resisting the military occupation of their land and have never relinquished their sovereignty. This is something that is shared between both indigenous people. In fact, as of September of 2025 of this year, 156 of the 193 UN member states have diplomatically recognized Palestine as a state. Despite this recognition, the indigenous Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank have been terrorized by the Israeli occupying forces since 1967. And since 2007, Israeli authorities have put Gaza under siege in a military takeover. And this was known as the blockade that had been going on, which some had argued was a genocide even before the genocide that we've been seeing in the last 2 years. The third point is that though the actions of the occupying forces, through the actions of both occupying forces, both lands have experienced attacks on their sustainability, which is resulting in a kind of siege, which is hunger, tonight's topic. And so according to the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 217, the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of oneself, including food, is a human right. Everyone should know food is a human right. Yet we have seen the federal government withhold SNAP benefits, access to food dollars during the recent government shutdown. And last month, food banks in Hawaii reached a crisis point because of the federal government SNAP shutdown. Even without a government shutdown, nearly 1 in 3 households in Hawaii are food insecure, meaning they can't access the food that they need to thrive. Palestinians similarly face this experience of a lack of food and restricted access to food, resulting in 1.3 out of the 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza needing food assistance. We see that despite the limitless resources spent on military warfare, occupying forces lack regard for indigenous populations that struggle to survive due to hunger and food scarcity in both Hawaii and Palestine. To combat a hunger siege, indigenous populations look toward sustainability. Both Hawaii and Palestine were sustainable before occupation, as indigenous peoples have always had a way of knowing how to be one with the land and how to cultivate food from the land year after year. But Gazans cannot sustain themselves with traditional farming, fishing, agriculture due to Israeli occupying forces' destruction of the area. The United Nations Environmental Program report recently dissected the ways in which Israel's genocidal warfare tactics have contaminated water sources, marine and coastal life, fishery, terrestrial ecosystems, and much more. And Israel's genocide has not just impacted Gazans and prevented them from now being able to fish from in a sustainable environment, but it's also impacted the global population, all of us. The UN Special Rapporteur for the Environment, David Boyd, stated that the immense magnitude of the IOF's military mission pushes humanity closer to the precipice of a climate catastrophe. And we know in the first 15 months, United Nations also reported on this, of the genocidal bombardment in Gaza, Israel used 22.5 kilotons of TNT during its bombardment in the densely populated civilian neighborhoods of Gaza. This is 1.5 times as much as a US nuclear bomb in Hiroshima. And it's also produced more CO2 emissions than 100 countries combined, just its genocidal war. So similarly in Hawaii, the land and the water are polluted by the US military. We know this about Red Hill, and that these kind of diminished sustainability approaches. Economic forces in Hawaii have also led to less sustainability. For example, Hawaii's most famous tourist destination, Waikiki, was once a wetland that contained hundreds of fish ponds that helped sustain the indigenous population, ensuring access to food. Today, roughly 90% of Hawaii's food is imported, located so far away from the continent. We often experience 11 to 30% higher costs due to this importation. Similarly, Israel's finance minister made clear that it ethnically cleansed Gaza for the malevolent purpose of demolishing the entire city so it could steal the land, divide it up for sale, calling it a real estate bonanza. This is Israel's finance minister. And so when people say, oh, what about October 7th? We know what the kind of mens rea or the thinking is of the colonial state. And so what we can glean from both places, the US and Israeli militaries, are destabilizing forces that poison land and water, that pave the way for corporate and real estate interests to take root, that usurp the ability of indigenous populations to engage in sustainability, and deprive them of a healthful environment, again, as promised by our Hawaii state constitution. Yet still, our state leaders continue to capitulate to military interests, as can be seen through Governor Green's actions regarding the military land leases, as well as other the 30-meter telescope and other crucial matters affecting the lands and the people. Just recently, hundreds of Kama'aina and Kanaka Uivi attended the Army's community hearings on the leases, saying no to this, submitting testimony, rejecting the final EIS of the U.S. Navy, and the Board of Land and Natural Resources also rejected it. Activists in the Native Hawaiian community have expressed in their open letter to Governor Green that a reminder is needed, and there's a number of reasons why there is a call for demilitarization. The sacred burial grounds, the nature of the leases that were only supposed to be for 65 years, and this perpetuation that folks don't want, the telescope, sacred ocean realms, and as well as we know the recent Kamehameha Schools Challenge, it's just when these lands, we know, as well as the last will and the testament of Ali'i, which was written under kingdom law and not American law, kind of show all the different reasons. And so these are these are just some examples. These are just some of a few examples of how Kanaka Uivi continue to experience occupation in their home, having their voices ignored and resources stripped from them by the government. I share these again not to take a position, but to uplift the positions of our allies who are fighting for civil liberty. And the last point I'll say is really on a national scale. We see that that President Trump is making reckless decisions geopolitically with this positioning, and his actions are taking us down to a path of isolation when it comes to foreign affairs. And domestically, there is this risk of falling into authoritarianism. And so what we have been seeing, especially with President Trump's recent purging of military generals, as well as the deployment of our military in U.S. streets against U.S. citizens, that these are all signs of what's called democratic backslide. And while only 2 to 3% of democracies backslide, when they start backsliding, 70% of the time they fall into authoritarianism. And so we're in a really critical spot federally
as well as locally. And one proven fact to stop this backsliding, is to get 3.5% of the population activated to see if democracy can be saved. But most importantly, we need to use our voices. We need to use free speech. In order to protect free speech, you have to use your voice. You have to exercise your rights. And so really, I want to invite folks tonight to think about what are radical conversations that can propel the movement forward. We know that censoring speech is a tool to just erase the truth, and it's a tool of empire, and we see that empire is breaking, and that's why it's holding close to this control of censoring speech. We know that through the Biden administration as well as the Trump administration, they worked hard to silence dissent on Israel and Palestine by conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism and censoring that speech. We know too that Native Hawaiians underwent a cultural genocide by taking away the language and not allowing the preservation of culture. And language embodies the values of its speakers. And so it's so important for us to protect speech and to stand in solidarity in this moment with marginalized voices that are calling for change. And while it's scary to think of a so-called democratic state failing, we can utilize this moment to think of an alternative. And so the role is to make sure, for ACLU of Hawaii, it's for us to make sure that organizations can amass the support they need while we can protect their free speech rights, their free assembly rights. And we want to continue to make sure that people are advocating and sort of reimagining. And so while we may or may not see, for example, the return of these islands to the Hawaiian Kingdom in our generation, we can start imagining a better future now. And so as the federal government starts to descend into chaos and malfunction and collapse, we need to build radically and move the momentum forward for a new world order. And at the ACLU of Hawaii, we understand all the ways in the federal governance is failing us, and we believe the next best step to ensure sustainability and alignment with our values is to build state veils. So this is why we're fighting harder than ever in state courts rather than the federal court, advocating for new laws in our legislature here locally to protect us from federal encroachment, because we can still start to build so much locally and even at the municipality level to protect our communities and one another. And so having worked on human rights issues in both Philistine and Hawaii, I have been so blessed to share space with Kanaka Uivi and Palestinians who come from communities that love and care for the land in a way that empire does not. The empire wants to profit and pillage off land, but does not want to take care of it. Indigenous people, however, have always recognized their kuleana to take care of the land. Here in Hawaii, we have a constitutional right to a healthful environment. And as a civil libertarian, I hope to invest greater resources into showing how life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness cannot be achieved without safeguarding the air we breathe, the land we live on, and the water we drink. At the ACLU of Hawaii, we support the cultural and political relationship of Kanaka Uivi as stewards of the land, and we also honor our Palina and Kuleana to the land and its people as an organization that sits in Hawaii. Thank you for allowing me to share space this evening. Mahalo.
Anyone got questions? No?
I really appreciate that, Selma, for really bringing forward that recognition of that we have, mahalo nui. But just wanted to add that it also reminds us, right, that I feel like we sometimes, when it comes to these issues in places that are distant, we forget the connection and the ability to create an impact in our own backyards. And when we think about Hawaii, we think about, and how you brought up, like, RIMPAC is exercised here. This is an abundant tourism destination. And on one end, you can look at it as a huge pressure and stressor that even for me as a Kanaka Uivi experienced too. But on another end, when we think about concepts of lua, the idea that you're gonna throw a punch at me now, that's a gift because you can now snap a wrist. But in that understanding is, how do you accept the gift? So in our case, the world is in our backyard. It comes here in very different facets, whether it's coming here for the exercise training and the violence that occurs here, whether it's for the tourism destination, Or let's also talk about how it's also now like this huge place of where the billionaires are now building their private estate homes because they think they're safe from the rest of the world. But for us, that is also a reminder of the huge amount of responsibility, whether we like it or not, that we have in Hawaii, that we can hold these people accountable. Like, sorry, the idea of American exceptionalism, which has festered into the things that we're seeing in other countries and other places, let Hawaii and let the Hawaiian Kingdom, or however we want to proceed with it, be that place that drives the accountability that ends that idea of exceptionalism. This idea that we can continue to pillage the world until, in a sense of, as even like the Greek mythologies point to, Aristashan, I think was his name, the king who gets so greedy and he's cursed with the greed so he consumes everything, including himself. We don't get to let that mo'olelo live. And we in Hawaii have that strong ability to do something that triggers news on a mass scale of the people who said it's time to hold the Fourth Reich accountable. Because it took the world to hold the last one. And now if it can begin anywhere, it should begin here. And that's a huge burden for our community to hold. But at the same time, it's now time when we think about unifying Hawaii into that shared vision for our home and how it impacts not just our home, but the world, that we're gonna also have to have deep discussions too and around what that kind of a shared vision and how we construct it. And again, we don't always have to agree, but we don't have to be disagreeable either in the pursuit for a better world. So mahalo. Mahalo, Selma.
Along those lines with like fighting for Aina, like there are places around the world that have given like the Mauna personhood. Like in South America, they just gave this stingless honeybee personhood. And if we bring this to like a legislature and to lawhood, like we can give our Mauna like personhood, and then the land itself will also have rights just like we do. And I think that's something that we should pursue. Thank you.
You know, I was thinking about what you were saying about using our voice, and I think that for some people that can be like overwhelming, or like what does that even mean, or I closed the bridge. What are you talking about? We did all these things. We're using our voice, and I do think it's also these tiny conversations. And having experienced, for me, 4 months in Palestine, in the West Bank, in this way, it can be overwhelming, and I can kind of like black out and just kind of spew a whole bunch of information at you, and that doesn't really engage with people. And I kind of have like written off this idea of trying to speak to Zionists as someone who has left Zionism, and how they can how I can deprogram them or de-brainwash them. And maybe you feel like, oh, I don't know enough of the history, or I don't understand enough, or maybe it is complicated. And I think that I just had another one of these conversations again where you're like, how are you asking me if I condemn Hamas? Why are you asking me where I want all the settlers to go? Like, how am I still getting these same ridiculous questions? And these questions are designed to make us feel like we don't know enough, or we can't possibly have the answers for this. And what I've been realizing more and more and more, it's the occupied and the occupier. You're either working for the occupation, or you're decolonizing it. There is the oppressed and the oppressor. And I used to think too that like Black people were the only people that could really experience racism in this country, or at all. And then I really understood Zionism is racism, and I experienced that time and time and time again. So if we can explain to Zionists who like throw these Hamas and what about and the two sides and it's complicated, if we can break it down to just that, and it's the oppressed and the oppressor, right? There is nothing, even if in all of the wildest dreams of Hamas, these wants that you are claiming, even if those wants were true, the Zionist is coming to you and saying, but they want to do this and they want to do that. Even if all of those wants were true, what is their actual position, right?
Israelis are getting billions of dollars this year alone to blow up the land and the people and the water. You know, they're given all of these resources, and there's no one like funding this want that you're talking about. So I tried to like think about how we can use our voice. So it is in these really big ways. We do need to like put our bodies and art and lives on the line to stop RIMPAC. It's coming up next year. Let's get on some Signal chat. But also, we need to be having these like relentless conversations. There are Israeli restaurants here. There are Israeli skincare companies here, and they are allowed. No one really reminds them that they are not only occupiers by definition of being Israeli, but they're also occupiers here. And I like to see us using our voices in as many ways as possible. Perhaps that's a nice way to stop using my voice right now.
One more thing. So sorry, a few points just popped into my head. But one is around this common understanding, right, that the pursuit of peace is not as dramatic as the pursuit of war. And that needs to be something that's strongly pursued. We oftentimes talk about peace and world peace as this abstract, but the other part to the reality, is that any more acceptable? So that's one thing. The other part that I think about is how our kupuna and learning the principles of how they maintain peace. Because one thing I think about our elders is they lived in a very need-based society. And when we think about that, we can quote Gandhi in that understanding of the world is big enough for everybody's need, but not everybody's greed. So how do we build this idea of creating this need-based community where, yes, we may want all these things, but guess what? You can't have it because it's going to take away from the kids' ability to eat too. So I think those are the ideas, and kind of strengthening too when we think about Hawaii and the Hawaiian Kingdom. You know, one of my visions too is really this idea about how do we reframe war? Because one of the discussions that I really appreciate Auntie Lynette Cruz and other kupuna who've been in this movement, who are trying to really work at doing some forms of mediation with the military, with their kupuna council, was how we had very different definitions of peace, which I found very interesting. The military's definition of peace, the US military specifically, was around peace is what's attained after the death of your adversary and what we create after. It's like, well, that's different. Because for us, peace is like the influx of harmony, and how do we not even get to that point of even having the conflict in the first place? So what does it mean when we have those systems to inform? What does a peace force look like? What would the world look like if we invested more in feeding, in nurturing our children, our women, our elders, rather than getting into these contentions? And how do we drive that sort of a change? Sorry, not to take up too much time, but those are the things that I think about. And when I think about us as a community, it's not just standing in solidarity as a community. We also have the unique gift of being recognized as a sovereign nation. So how do we utilize that mechanism to then become a legal body that influences international policy, not as a community, but as a kingdom, as a nation, and what that looks like next? So I think we have to really think about of unlayering all of our understandings of how we can engage and which tools in our kit can we utilize and how do we utilize them. So I think that's another broader discussion for our Lāhui here in Hawaii. Mahalo.
Well, before we conclude, I just wanted to ask, like, is there any last thoughts on what we can do?
Community-led solution.
Yes. I think Jasmine really started talking about it earlier, and that is that we have every single thing we need, and that is our personal power. And that is the way we decide to spend our money. That is the way we decide to have conversations, where we work, where we decide to make our communities. And you know, I think that reminding people that they have their own personal power. Think about what your skills are. Not good on the water. Glad you could do that.
I'm good on the land, and I can, negotiate with people and figure out a language barrier, and I can do all these things. I have some time. I can figure this out. I could go to Palestine, and that's really, I think, what brought Ashley and I both to Palestine, was realizing that we could go. I knew who Rachel Corri was before joining the International Solidarity Movement. She was someone that was murdered 20 years ago by the IOF during a demolition. I knew who she was, but I had no idea that her organization, the organization that she was with, was still around. And now I'm doing their vetting. Now I'm working on their media. Now I have gone to Palestine 2 times with them. So I don't know everyone's personal situation. I can't imagine that this is something that everyone can do. But I am always very excited to talk about, like the way that you are too. You can talk to any of us. We are happy to see what it is that you can do, what it is that is your personal power.
Another thing I do with community sometimes is I have a list of questions. Actually, I didn't think that there was time for it tonight, but it's a conversation that is where it starts, right? Like we can bring these conversations back to our other circles, back to our communities, and like ask these hard questions and talk about it with each other, and like learn more about our neighbors and like the people in our community. And like once we build these bonds centered on Palestine, centered on like Kanaka rights, centered on like Aina rights, like that's when the momentum builds, and that's when it like the networks and the mycelium that like exists within all of us is able to like build up, and like that momentum needs to like have a space, and it's within us. And so if anyone wants the list of questions, you guys can take a picture of it, and it's a good starting block for you to take back to your own spaces and to like have these conversations with people that you do feel safe with, in order to then grow the like energy of safety in like a larger community space. Because I think that like something that we all have in common here, and like the momentum of the global solidarity movement, is that what we are up against is like a space that does not feel safe. And like what our mission is to create these safe spaces. And there's so many things like patriarchy, misogyny, like dicks, people like being assholes that like don't want to, create safe spaces. And sorry for my vulgar language, but like it is just that, like if we create safe spaces, then it's all good, that's like the harmony that we're talking about, that's the peace that we're like talking about, like, and it's possible. And I truly believe that like when we embody safety within ourselves, when we feel safe and we can create safe spaces, like that's my goal. Like my goal in this life is just to be a safe space so that people can feel like they can take a breath, and like that we can like work the land together, and that we can like be together in like a good way, and then to leave in a good way. So like also when you leave, please take the things that you came with. Thank you.
I'll be super quick. Keep doing our own work, decolonizing our own minds and selves, keep waking people up, starving, the beast, empire, Israel. Maybe, Jasmine, you can pull up your list of boycott, like have the image up on a laptop if it's, I don't know, just, and get that app. No thanks, but.
Yeah, in our own backyards across the islands, immigrants are really feeling the same kind of terrorizing that the IOF is doing on Palestinians. And so, I think like, again, I'm so happy that we're having these conversations, and international and global solidarity is so important, but there is a lot of cruelty happening right now in ways that people haven't seen before, and we do some of this work. If you go to acluhawaii.org, you can join us, become a member. We're trying to legislate in the legislature come January. If you sign up, you'll see like submit testimony on ensuring that we have laws that make sure that we don't have federal agents in our streets that are wearing masks and aren't identified and look like thugs. It's no secret police bill we have coming up, ACLU, submit testimony, get on our side. There's a whole package of other kind of legislative things to get involved with our programming. So I would love to keep building on this on this work too, whatever we can. Again, we serve as sort of an expert ally, so we don't do some of the work that, you know, we don't do indigenous justice work like as a lead, but we will be an expert ally to other organizations. Like we have supported Kamehameha schools and what they're going through right now, and shown in solidarity. And so however we can come in, we focus narrowly on impact litigation and legislation that will make kind of wide sweeping changes. But anything we can do to be an expert ally, like this conversation tonight, and how we can support reimagining and thinking of other forms of governance, because our governance methods have not worked and will not work. And yes, we can think about infusing, I loved your idea of personhood and how we can get more of indigenous values to really kind of breathe the ethos of our government one day is the imagination. We'd love to be part of those conversations. And I think for all of you right now, you know, the moment is really dark in many different layers, and everybody is feeling it. And I think, you know, there are no political solutions to spiritual ailments. And so whatever you do to anchor yourselves in this moment is going to be really important for the next few years. And so I would, you know, urge you to hold on to your spiritual practices and your community and whatever you need, like Jasmine was saying, to feel safe and to feel at peace, because that's you can't do this work without having that, or else it's gonna hurt you. So yeah, I would empower you to empower yourselves, and then step into this work. And you know, we'll all be in community. I'm so happy to be in community. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give another round of applause for our guests, please? Truly it was, sorry.
Sorry, didn't have my chanting mind ready. But if you know Iwano Luna, please join. If you don't know it, just briefly explain, it's part of a Hawaiian prophecy, the Kapihe prophecy, which acknowledges what's below will one day rise up, and what's above us will one day come down, and our islands will come together as one, and the walls will stand strong. So this idea of recognizing that power shifts do happen, and it comes from the bottom up, and we honor that within our culture. So that's a reminder of the ability to not only have prophecy, but to create those prophetic times in your own moment. So yeah.
E ikoano luna e piano lalo e huiana na moku e kuana kapaia. E ikoano luna e piano lalo e huiana na moku e kuana kapaia. E ikoano luna e piano lalo e huiana na moku e kuana kapaia.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Mahalo everyone for coming. We will get that list of questions to you from Jasmine on your email. So all of you have registered, so we will email you those lists of questions and any other information Jasmine wants to get out there. We'll put that on the email, so look for that. And then, you know, I think there's some food left. Please help yourself or take a plate home. And thank you so much. Tomorrow we will be at Mount Ka'ala at 10 a.m. If anybody wants to join us, me and Jazz will be going up, and we can spend more time and talk more about Palestine and to continue making those connections here with Hawaii. And please drive home safely, and mahalo nui everyone for coming. Aloha.
I loved it. It was so natural. I loved it. That was a great interaction. Thank you guys so much for coming.